there's something to be said for like when you train a model, you have to define what beauty means and give give the model an aesthetic score system. So you have to choose what um, what kind of image result is more aesthetically pleasing than the other. So in doing that, you're defining what beauty is, and that will naturally lead you toward um, adding some kind of bias. And like when you get really into generative AI, you see a lot of images because you create them, but then you also see a lot of images in the community that you're a part of. And I got into generative AI through being intensely involved in the Midjourney community, so I've seen tens of thousands of images. And by now,
Offline.
it's
Good
really
times.
obvious if somebody has a prompt that's just a few words and leans heavily on some default Midjourney style, or
Yeah,
if
it's a
somebody
set.
has put in more careful like craftspersonship and nuance into their prompt. For me, I can tell the difference in like half a second. So I think there's something to be said for that kind of unique voice.
Yeah, and also from my side, I think AI is great in generating novelty. And for instance, I started creating designs for specific brands to see what can I do with AI. And
My
if I put
favorite, this
just the
one.
name in the prompt of that brand,
So nice.
the results are quite similar. So one workaround that I did was to include specific images. For instance, if I wanted to design some bags for a specific brand, I took from the internet several pictures. Now I think it's enough to have between 10, 20 pictures of that bag line. I put it in Midjourney, and then I started to redesign the prompt in order to consider the key elements from that specific brand. So this is one of the limitations I discovered and I found out to design for a specific idea, for a specific brand. And we have luck because today we don't need a lot of data to manipulate the algorithm. So as I said, between 10, 20 images are already enough in order to say, for instance, to Midjourney tool, look, this is how I want, this is how the bags for this specific brand look like. And this is what you want to generate for me in this style.
Irina, I love that you're like sharing from that experience as well and how to kind of like work around, because I think that that's really important. Julian, would you like to chime in?
Yes, thanks. I was just wanted to add because we're actually in the process right now of converting the AI generated images from Midjourney to 3D files and AR files. And Irina, by the way, was one of the 10 selected first images before the community vote. And Irina generated amazing images, like dozens. I think like maybe over 45, like a lot. And now it's interesting to see all 3D designers like Chloe, modelists, creators trying to convert these images into 3D files and
You
then
sold
convert
so
them.
many.
Yeah, and of course the idea is beautiful to use your imagination to create content, but the limitation doesn't provide a full aspect of the product. You still need to kind of like go around and fill in the gaps of the pieces of the product that is missing and create it yourself. So I wish for a more advanced AI generation tool that will enable us to create 3D files and interoperable files and wearable files, but I know it's just a matter of time.
Ook shorts. Really? Wow.
I couldn't agree more. I think that
Recycled
is
cotton.
definitely something that we're seeing as like an issue now, but where there is like problems, right? That is where innovation comes from. So I always think that it's really interesting to see because like right now we are seeing that as an issue, but obviously it's going to become it's going to be a problem that someone's going to come in and solve. There is actually like a program that's taking like 2D images and turning them into 3D renders. Yasmin, do you know the name of that company? I think it's a startup.
Yeah, so there's a couple of companies that I'm aware of that are doing things. So there's a company called Clothes 3D, who I saw about 12 months ago, and even at that
12
stage,
months.
what they were doing was incredible in terms of being able to kind of take images and put them on very realistic body shapes to the end product, and you could see what that item could look like on different body shapes. There's another one called Ventana, something like that. But even on the platform of our partner, Hardly Ever Worn It,
Come you put this price on this beautiful item?
They've trialed just being able to create much more 3D 3D renders of images for social media, just for better engagement, for people to be able to kind of really see and feel closer to the product,
wow, really
to be able to engage with it. But this technology is getting better by the month. And where we sit as a company is that, yes, we're creating almost the brain of the AI in being able to match people to things that they will love. But then what we are hoping to do is be able to leverage the cool stuff other people are doing in the future. So say somebody sees a dress, they like that dress, then
I thought the color is like this,
on their, an avatar of
but
their
it's all
own
gray.
body at a touch of a button. That's something that we wouldn't build, but we know people are building that.
Yeah, I think that it's Clothes 3D is a really common program in the 3D space, especially the avatar and fashion communities. So we've seen a lot of it, but I didn't know if they had the option of going from 2D. Joshua, I would love to hear maybe one of the programs that you know of, or
yeah, there's one that I know of that is purely generative 3D that's already out. And so by that I mean you type a text prompt in, and then it creates a 3D model, or you submit one or more images.
How many? What?
And it creates a 3D model, and that is KDIM, KAEDIM. I guess I'm just guessing how to pronounce it.
Got a lot of followers here.
That company has something already released, and they just in the last couple days offered a slightly lower tier model. It's pretty expensive in terms of computational power. So I want to say their indie model is currently $125 a month USD. And then there's a couple other companies that are coming out with, they've kind of released a demo, just to get people excited, but they haven't opened it up to the broader public yet. One of them is Masterpiece Studio, and they are a company that's 3D content creation. And then the other one is Luma Labs. Now, Luma Labs is interesting because they are known for their NERF technology, NERF, and that is a way that you can use a mobile device, and you're kind of walking along a room, and it's recording the visuals in the room, and it creates a 3D model from that. They have released a demo, a video for, I think it's called Imagine, I think is all it's called. Sorry, I can't remember the exact name of that product, but it's current Masterpiece Studio, I think, and I know at least Imagine are both in kind of close-knit private testing, but pretty soon they'll be opened back up more, so that more open to the public in a public beta form. But KDIM is the one that I know that's currently out that you can use. I did try it, and it has some limitations, but it's still pretty amazing, and it feels like magic. What you can do, just giving it an image, and then it creates a pretty reasonable 3D approximation of it with the way that it's technically constructed is pretty well done. So
I think that's the one that I knew about or was thinking of. I think when I had found it, it wasn't out yet. I did pin it to the top for anybody that's interested, along with a few other things. So anybody who is following along in the conversation, I've been pinning things so that way you guys have easy access to the links that we've been chatting about. So I think it's crazy because as much as these are like limitations, I really do think that it's changing over time, and creating just more innovation within the space. So it's going to be really interesting to see as this space evolves. Um, I kind of am curious what role you guys see, um, when it comes to AI in the fashion design side of things. I know that it's really, I mean, it's been around for a while, um, but I really don't feel like fashion designers were using it so much for um, the like design process, and I feel like we're starting to see it more and more, especially in like the luxury brand space, and with like people that are just using those brands to create their own AI fashion. So I'm very curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this. Jupiter, I'm not sure how long you've had your hand up, but feel free.
I can answer this question. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks so much for having me. I'm avoiding Twitter Spaces because my voice is quite, I have a lot of big opinions on that. I started my first fashion AI company in 2014, and it was visual recognition. And I also joined in a startup in New York, Tinker Tailor, that did mass customization, and we used Claw 3D as one of the first people to use Claw 3D. I remember my body being scanned, and I'm like petite. So I was like, no, I don't want to see myself in this avatar form ever again. Anyway, so, and I also wrote about the implementations of blockchain technology back in 2017, and how to see the future of digital fashion in 2018. So I really know the space really well. Co-founded a decentralized social network, but now to answer your question, Taylor, how to apply it in the fashion space. I've been also advising for the past 8 years startups on implementations of tech like this, and I always say, and still it's not implemented, for upcycling. Think about it. We've already produced so much. There's so much fabric to use. There's so much designs. There's a lot of, from a buyer's perspective, we buy mostly basics still, so it's like only this amount of stuff that is like silhouette driven, and we can create mass custom, actually create items as upcycled pieces, and use AI to tap into the current designs that we got to play with. It's very, very fashionable right now, just generally in this like upcoming, I believe, aesthetic of upcycling and connecting and bringing together different different silhouettes basically and different fabrics. And I really wonder how it's gonna go about with the co-branding that we can, as a fashion industry, to introduce potentially, where we're already seeing big brands collaborating with each other, but it was just a little teaser. But I think it will be a lot of opportunity for high-end and low-end fashion designers to come together in this collaborative manner. And I think we as digital fashion AI community and the Web3 community have a lot to say and advise these organizations such as LVMH and H&M, how to work together and create a fashion industry that is uniting and not like exclusive. So that's just a few cents from me. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining. Always a pleasure to have like a true OG in the space who's been doing AI and just like helping brands onboarding using blockchain and all of that. So thank you so much for joining and being here and adding into the conversation. I mean, I'm with you. I think that we can utilize the tech in so many different ways, and using it for good versus for bad would be like much more beneficial. And I think also like how can we go about that with like the designs. It's interesting. I never really thought about it in that sense, like utilizing it for upcycling, like merging these two shirts together. Like, how can you take the tech that we have in AI and actually like use photos from clothing that you have at home to have them merge them together and see what the results would be. I'm very curious to see like more and see how more artists can kind of do that. Would be really interesting. Um, Anybody else have anything on like chiming in on this topic in general for like the design side of things?
Yeah, I know Maximilian, you've created like you've done both AI-based fashion design and also like using more traditional, I guess, non-AI tools, for lack of a better word. I was curious, like, what do you think about how they differ from each other?
Well, thank you so much for the question. I didn't get to introduce myself earlier, so let me just quickly say my name is Maximilian, and my friends call me Maximilian, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I create in fashion. My entrance to the fashion world was very early. My first modeling job, I was like 3. I was on the catwalk, and not coincidentally, the name that I do all of my digital designs under, I call it Catwalk, CTWLK. And to answer your question, Joshua, so I'm finding like the different nuances. I'm using the features of the different nuances to help me create different things. I really love using AI for creating my patterns, especially like early drafts of patterns. I find it just like so exciting and intuitive how I can. So I'm a person who uses multiple tools for every creation. I use my iPad and I use a program called Procreate. If you don't have an iPad and you're curious about this, it's a really inexpensive program. It's just $10. The reason why I use it is because it allows me to use my Apple Pencil, and I start
You
a
have
lot
an
of my
Apple
designs
Pencil, you
just
have an
drawing my
iPad, you
hand
have
in a digital
$10 to
format.
spare on the digital
And
program.
then I
Great.
use AI to make different like renditions to show me more iterations of what I've already designed. I really love using AI as an assistive tool. For friends who are new to AI, if you don't know, when you have a design, if you take the controls of the AI and you drag it to its very lowest point where it's just adding the tiniest touch of AI to your design, you might be amazed how wonderful your own
These are
designs are.
nice.
It
I think
doesn't
that's the
change it
only
very
item
much.
that I
It kind of
liked
just
so far.
maybe smooths out the lines or gives a little bit more form, gives it a little bit more polish. So I really love using AI to help me with especially first drafts of design. I
Do
started
you want to
using
watch the film?
recently, and oh my gosh, I know we're not supposed to do this, and I'm not sure when it happens, but I kind of one thing I love about Clo is I love how when I use Clo, I'm working now
Another
with pieces
space.
of fabric, like individual like segments. A strip of fabric for the arm, a strip of fabric for the collar, a chunk of fabric for the back, a chunk for the front, a little chunk for each boob, you know. And I love how there's an aspect how all the pieces they stand up around each other, so you can kind of see what you're creating. And I love how sometimes I tell it to render in 3D, but it haven't sewn the piece together yet. And I love watching all of that cloth just fall to the floor. I love designing in 3D because it really